Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be revisiting a really powerful deck from BT03 or Special Booster 1.5's meta and updating it for BT04 because I still think with all of the new cards that the new set is adding, it's looking to be a really powerful deck to still consider playing, and the new tools definitely help give it some new life and new legs. So without further ado, this is going to be an updated version of Blue Imperialdramon. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitamas, I'm going to be running one copy of Upamon. So Upamon is still just a very fantastic Digitama to run just because it's acting as some good card draw engine because of his ability of when attacking once per turn. If your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in play, then you get to draw one card. So this is just really good because it's a super easy way for us to draw cards, and even though it is limited to once per turn when we're attacking, it's still just drawing us a card, and that's all we really want because we are a deck that really wants high consistency, and the high consistency definitely comes from the good amount of card draw that we could be playing with. But as for the main Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of DemiVeemon. So this is the BT03 version of DemiVeemon because he has this really powerful inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn. If this Digimon has jamming, then you get to draw one card. So this is just another engine card to help us be as consistent as we possibly can by allowing us to draw more cards. This time the condition is tied to jamming, which a lot of the Digimon in the deck have jamming, so we definitely could take use of this ability. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be playing 3 copies of Elecmon. So Elecmon is just that value-efficient vanilla card where he has a really low play cost, really low evo cost, and really decent DP for his level. And that's really all we're trying to utilize the card for, is just to be as aggressive and efficient with him as we possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Gabumon. So this is the BT01 Gabumon, and this Gabumon is still a really good card to be playing just because he has this nice on-play ability of allowing us to draw one card. So when we're raw playing him from our hand, being able to utilize him to draw a card is just very good because, again, we want to be as consistent as we possibly can. So making sure that we have as many different ways to draw cards in the deck as we can only adds to the consistency. So Gabumon is just looking to be a really good card to be utilizing. Next up, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Veemon. So this is the BT03 Veemon, and this Veemon is still a really fantastic card for the deck to be playing because it was already good before, so it should still be good now. But what this card is doing more specifically is he natively has the ability of jamming. So the jamming ability, having it on a rookie, just allows him to be that much more aggressive that much earlier in the game, and this allows you to basically just win security checks against the opponent's security Digimon, so you could just feel free to swing away and not worry about him getting deleted by the opponent's security unless it's an option. But pair this up with the DemiVeemon and you have some really good early card draw engine going, and it's a really powerful and aggressive card that we could be utilizing in many different ways because of all of the support that we have for the jamming ability as a whole. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Gomamon. So this Gomamon is basically doing the exact same thing as Elecmon because he has the exact same stats, and all of the reasons why we want to utilize Elecmon is all the same that we're running Gomamon. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gorillamon. So Gorillamon is still just a very powerful card to be running in the deck just because he has this very low evo cost of 1, making him just very efficient to digivolve up into, and on top of the fact that he has a really low evo cost, he also has some relatively high DP, so that allows him to be a very aggressive champion to be playing in the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of ExVeemon. So ExVeemon is still just a really powerful card to think about utilizing in the deck just because he has this nice when digivolving ability where you get to unsuspend one of your level 4 or lower Digimon. So if you're able to build a solid board state and you just have, let's say, a Veemon sitting on the field and another Digimon to digivolve into ExVeemon, then you can make the very powerful combo play of swinging with Veemon, digivolve into ExVeemon, stand up the Veemon, and then swing with the Veemon again. Or even at worst, you could utilize the Veemon to swing, then digivolve into ExVeemon, and then swing with the ExVeemon. So there's just a whole bunch of different applications you could utilize his ability for, and as such, that's still why he is such a good card to be playing in the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Lobomon. So Lobomon is one of the new cards that added into the deck thanks to BT04, and Lobomon is actually a really insane card for this deck to be playing with because he has this nice ability where you can Digivolve this card from your hand on top of one of your blue tamers as if it was a level 3 Digimon. So the tamer that we're playing doesn't really do anything after we initially play him, so Lobomon acting as a good way to actually utilize all of those dead tamers is just very, very powerful and very, very aggressive because it could end up being an attack that might not be accounting for, and that one attack could help swing the tide of the game or be able to take the game himself. So Lobomon just having this ability makes him super good for the deck overall because, again, we're a very aggressive style of deck. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Grizzlymon. So Grizzlymon is still the deck's dedicated blocker just because we don't really have anything else that's really worth running. And as such, I just felt like because we're a more aggressive style of deck, we don't necessarily need or want to see Grizzlymon as often as we would, but it's still nice to have in the deck just in case we need to use him. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Paildramon. So Paildramon is in the deck, obviously, because we're an Imperialdramon deck, and he has some really good synergy with Imperialdramon. Not only does he help make our Imperialdramon more efficient, he also makes our Imperialdramon more powerful and more threatening, thanks to his inheritable ability of, when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has Imperialdramon in its name, then we get to unsuspend it. So this just allows us to make multiple attacks with our Imperialdramon and allows us to do that consistently. So the longer Imperialdramon is on the field, the more attacks he'll rack up and the more damage he could do, and that's just going to help close the game faster. And on top of all of that, he natively has the jamming ability, so he has all of the jamming support that the deck wants, and we could even utilize the card in some aggressive ways if we need to just start aggressing with him. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Dinobeemon. So Dinobeemon is actually a little bit better than I initially thought of a card. I really didn't like him at first, but the more I was playing with the deck and the more I understood what the card was doing, the more he slowly grew on me, and I definitely really like what this card is doing. So not only is he a really good card because he helps make our Imperialdramon that much more efficient to play, and on top of that, he has 2 very powerful keywords. So the first really powerful keyword he has is Piercing. So when this Digimon attacks and deletes an opponent's Digimon and survives the battle, then you get to perform a security check. So this is just really good just because he could get over a lot of the opponent's blockers and still be able to deal security damage, on top of which we could also use him very aggressively to pick off a lot of the opponent's Digimon, and for picking off the opponent's Digimon, we're still going to be dealing security damage. So he's just really powerful for both of those aspects on how you could utilize the piercing ability, and on top of which, because he is going to be interacting with Imperialdramon in some way, shape, or form, he also has jamming as his second keyword, thus making him even more powerful because when he does any security checks, he won't be able to be deleted by them unless they're an option that's going to be targeting him. So he's just a very aggressive card and such a powerful tool for the deck to be utilizing. Next, on to the Megas, I'm only going to be running 4 copies of Imperialdramon Dragon Mode. So Imperialdramon Dragon Mode is the only Mega in the deck because he is the only Mega we actually need in the deck outside of our level 7. So what Imperialdramon Dragon Mode is doing that's making him so powerful is the fact that if we Digivolve him off of Paildramon or Dinobeemon, then his evolution is reduced by 2, so he really just evos for 3, which is really good considering he has 12k DP, making him one of the more powerful and more efficient Megas that we could be running. And then on top of which, he natively has the jamming ability, so that way if the opponent is playing a whole bunch of level 7s, then we're free to still want to attack into their security because we know he won't be able to be deleted by the opponent's security Digimon. And then on top of all of that, he even has another really powerful ability, and this is what makes the card really shine, is his when Digivolving ability, where you get to unsuspend all of your Digimon with jamming. So the whole idea of this ability is to basically just be able to get a whole bunch of attacks off in a single turn. So the best card to utilize him with is obviously Paildramon. So that way you could swing with Paildramon, get the first attack off with his jamming, then he's going to be rested. Then Digivolve into Imperialdramon Dragon Mode, then his ability activates to unsuspend himself because he also has jamming, and then you could swing 2 more times thanks to his own first attack and Paildramon's inheritable giving him a second attack. So that's just a very powerful combo on being able to attack 3 times in a single turn, and then on top of which, if we have any other Digimon with jamming on the field, then we get to unsuspend them as well and get extra attacks that way too. So he's just a very powerful card for the deck, and he's basically the sole center point, and that's why I only feel like I just need to run him. Anything else just kind of feels like it's slowing down the deck and not really doing something advantageous, but I digress, and he is just a really powerful card to be playing around with still. And then the last mega of the deck is going to be the level 7 of the deck, and that's going to be 2 copies of Omnimon. So Omnimon is still a very powerful card just because he has this nice when digivolving ability where you get to choose one of the opponent's Digimon and then delete it, and then if the opponent has any Digimon on their field that share the same name as the one that you just deleted, then you get to delete those as well. So this is what's making Omnimon so powerful, is his level of removal, and his level of removal is just very, very powerful, especially for Blue, because Blue really doesn't have a good way of interacting with the opponent's Digimon. So if I really need to, I could combo off with Imperialdramon and then Digivolve into Omnimon to remove the opponent's threat, and then I still have the Omnimon to do whatever I want with it afterward. So Omnimon is still just very powerful for that aspect alone, and on top of which he even has another ability where when attacking you could unsuspend this Digimon by returning 1 level 6 Digimon from his Digivolution source to your hand. So this is a really good way to add back Imperialdramons so that way you could reuse them later, and he's getting multiple attacks off with some really high DP, so he's just overall a very fantastic card for the deck to be playing. Next, onto the option cards, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Hammerspark. So Hammerspark is still one of the best, if not the best, blue option we have in the game, just because for the low cost of 0, you get to gain 1 memory. So gaining this 1 memory just allows you to extend some of your plays and make some more powerful plays happen, on top of which it also has the very nice security ability of being able to gain 2 memory. So when it's checked in the security, it's effectively taking 2 memory away from the opponent, and that could be really, really brutal for the opponent, either ending their turn or disrupting some of their potential play lines. Next up, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Cochitis Breath. So Cochitis Breath is a little bit underrated just because it isn't necessarily seen as a super good card, but for this style of deck, this is exactly what we need, just because, again, Blue doesn't really have a whole lot of meaningful ways it could interact with the opponent's Digimon. So what Cochitis Breath is doing is it has the main ability of being able to return 1 of the opponent's Digimon back to their hand. So the unfortunate thing is that they could try to figure out a way to reuse that Digimon later, so that's why it hasn't been seen as such a good card to think about utilizing, but in a very aggressive style of deck, it does potentially buy you some time, and it could end up getting rid of an extra attack off of the opponent's board if this is checked early enough in the security. So it's still a very good card to be running just because it is interacting with the opponent's Digimon, getting the threat off the field even if it is for a temporary amount of time, but we could then utilize the time that we just gained to try to make a comeback play or figure out a way to win. So that's what's making Cochitis Breath super good, and on top of which it has the security ability of being able to activate its main effect, so that way even if it's in the security, you still are able to get the card's effect off. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only tamer of the deck, and that is going to be 4 copies of Davis. So Davis is an absolutely insane card for this deck because he really is just tying the whole deck together. So what he's doing is his first ability is he is a memory fixing tamer. So if you're ever less than 3 memory, he'll always just set your memory to 3. So that's already really good at preventing you from being memory choked. So that way you could always make sure you could try to at least play as much as you possibly can. And on top of which he has another really powerful ability of on play, you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and add 1 blue and 1 green Digimon among them into your hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So he could potentially draw you 2 cards, and because we're only running 4 copies of Imperialdramon, we definitely want to make sure that we see him as often as we possibly can. So that's kind of why we need a really good amount of card draw, so that way we can make sure that we can see Imperialdramon as consistently as we possibly can. And the fact that Davis could potentially add 2 cards to our hand is still very, very good, even if the only other card that he could grab outside of all of our blue Digimon is Dinobeemon. We don't necessarily care because we're at worst gaining 1 card off of him, which is still pretty good because he's effectively replacing himself. So that's what's making him really, really good. The only unfortunate thing is he doesn't really do anything afterward once we use him, but that's where a card like Lobomon comes in, where on our extra Davises, we could utilize them to Digivolve into Lobomon and then swing with Lobomon. On top of which, like I said, he is a memory-fixing tamer, and because we know Imperialdramon can Digivolve for 3, making sure that Davis is on the field as quickly as we possibly can just ensures we're able to actually utilize Imperialdramon if we have a Paildramon in Raising. So you do sometimes want to hold back on your evolutions, and you do want to try to build up a Paildramon in Raising so that way you can move him out, gain the 3 memory off of Davis, and then do the whole combo play between Paildramon and Imperialdramon. So that's just what is making Davis super powerful, is how he is just interacting with the deck and tying everything together. On top of which, he has the stereotypical Tamer security ability, where you just get to play the card for free out of your security, so it's just another easy way to try to get him into the security by maxing him out, so that way when he's checked in the security, we get to play him for free, which saves us from playing him from our hand, so we could then make more powerful plays that way. And then on top of playing around with the deck's ratios, there's still a lot of customization and flexibility that you could be playing around with in this style of deck. So here are a couple of cards that I felt like were noteworthy enough to talk about, just because all of these cards do synergize with what the deck is trying to do in some way, shape, or form, all depending on what you want to gain out of the deck. So you could think about playing the BT02 version of Veemon because we are playing around with the sub-theme of attacking multiple times. So Veemon has a really nice ability where once per turn during your turn, when this Digimon would become unsuspended, then you get to draw 1 card. So this is just really good because it's just additional card draw, on top of which if you really felt like it, you could lean a little bit more into the Veemon synergies, and this is just another Veemon if you're going that direction, but regardless, he is just a really good card to think about just for some extra card draw. Speaking of extra card draw, you could also think about playing Strabimon. So if you want, because we're already going to be playing Lobomon, you could change the deck around to incorporate a sub-hybrid theme, where you could think about playing Strabimon and some of the other hybrid cards, just because Strabimon has this really nice on-play ability, where you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and then add 1 Digimon with hybrid in its form, and or 1 blue tamer card among them into your hand, and then the rest go into the bottom. So similar to why Davis is good, this card could potentially add up to 2 cards into your hand, and that's just really helpful for the overall consistency of the deck, especially since the cards that we're looking for are going to be tamers and are hybrid Digimon, so this just is a really good card you could think about running if you want to play more hybrid support. If you want to play a little bit more low-to-the-ground aggressive, you could think about running Auroramon, and by proxy, you could also think about playing Leolmon, just because they both share some very aggressive stats, where because we're a blue base, we're always going to be hard playing this card for 2, but the fact that they are both green Digimon just give us another Davis target, and they have 5000 DP as a level 3, thus making it one of the more powerful level 3s that we could be utilizing, and we could just be very aggressive early on with the card. If you want to play a little bit more into the jamming sub-theme, then you could play Frigimon as another level 4 to think about, just because he natively has the jamming ability. Again, if you want to play into the Veemons, then you could also play the Veedramon, that also gains jamming as long as you have a blue tamer. But again, like, they're doing a very similar role, and you just are playing them just because they have jamming. And then on top of that, if you're still playing into some more hybrids, then you could also think about playing Kendo Garurumon, just because the tamer that we do want to be utilizing is Davis, so we know at the beginning of our turn we're at least going to have 3 memory, so we aren't necessarily afraid of the fact that Kendo does have a very high evo cost for a level 4, but we could just think about utilizing Davis still with another potential hybrid to Digivolve on top of him, just because he does have that same ability as Lobomon, with an extra upside of his own when attacking ability of being able to bounce the opponent's level 3s back to their hand. And then you get to trash all of their Digivolution sources. So he's just, again, another hybrid to utilize it, and he could still help us close out the game, similar to Lobomon. Then, with more hybrid support, you could also think about running Beowulfmon, just because Beowulfmon also has jamming, so he has interactions with Imperialdramon because he has jamming, on top of which he also has this really powerful ability where during the opponent's turn, if this card has a hybrid or blue tamer in its evolution source, then it can't be attacked into, so it forces the opponent to remove the card via ability or option. And then if you really want it to be super spicy, you could think about playing Leopardmon, just because Leopardmon can help create a very wide board with his when Digivolving ability to play a level 4 or lower Digivolution source as another Digimon. And then you also have the upside where during your turn all of your level 4 or lower Digimon gain jamming, so you have that jamming interaction and synergy there that plays with Imperialdramon quite nicely. Or if you just want to play more hybrids, then you could also think about playing Ancient Garurumon, just because Ancient Garurumon is interacting with a lot of our hybrid Digimon, and he's also interacting with a whole bunch of multi-attack sub-theme, so we could utilize him in some very aggressive ways if we're playing a sub-hybrid package. Then you also could think about playing Puppetmon, but Puppetmon is more of a situational tech card rather than something that you want to consistently rely on, because depending on the matchup, Puppetmon's ability might not really be doing a whole lot of being able to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon, and then during the opponent's next unsuspend phase, none of their Digimon get to unsuspend, but if the opponent has a way to just unsuspend their Digimon, then that doesn't really matter. So it is more of a matchup tech card, but he also has another really good ability of allowing you to gain 1 memory when he attacks. So he's not necessarily the worst card in the world, but he's not necessarily the best, all depending on what you want to gain out of the card and out of the deck. But the interesting thing to note is he is also another green Digimon, so he is another potential Davis target. And then if you really wanted to, you also could think about running the Imperialdramon Dragon Mode that is green, just as another green Digimon, and just because you're already playing the blue one, and they basically are doing some very similar things, except the only difference is this version of Imperialdramon is more focused on the piercing ability and wanting to clear the opponent's Digimon through attacking them, but it also could still unsuspend and do multi-attacks all the same, so you could just think about running him just, again, as another green card and as another potential Imperialdramon to be playing with. And then you also have access to some really powerful new option cards. So one of the more standout option cards that Blue got in BT04 is going to be Aqua Viper, just because it is a really low-cost removal card. So this synergizes really well just because it's allowing you to return one of your Digimon to return up to 2 of the opponent's Digimon that are level 4 or lower. So returning one of your Digimon isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, just because we have some really efficient rookies that we want to be playing with, or we want to try to trigger on play abilities again. This card allows us to do either of those, and the level 4s is most commonly where the blockers are located in the game, so being able to potentially remove a blocker or 2 is still very, very powerful. And because we're trying to play Davis as early as we possibly can, we still will have enough memory to still make some other lines of play, because Davis will set us to 3, we play Aqua Viper, we go down to 0, and then it's still our turn to do whatever we want with. And then on top of that, the card has a really good security ability of it being able to send itself to our hand, so that way we could figure out when is the best time to utilize this card. And then the best other tamer that I could think of that you would possibly want to run is going to be the starter deck version of Matt, just because he's a really low-costed tamer, being at 2, and he has a really nice ability where at the start of your turn, if the opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in play, then you get to gain 1 memory. So similar to why you like Upamon is kind of like why you would like Matt, where if the opponent just so happens to run into the situation where their Digimon doesn't have any evolution sources, then being able to passively gain that 1 memory could make or break a lot of plays and make a lot of your plays that much more powerful. On top of which, he is just another tamer to just sit on the field to do something until we feel like digivolving him into one of our hybrids to try to utilize that to swing and deal a lot of extra damage. So, as I mentioned before at the beginning of the video, the deck is still relatively strong and it could still perform relatively well, and with all of the new tools, it definitely has a lot more possibilities in terms of different ways and different tech cards that you could utilize. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are different ways that you could support me in the channel. So one of those ways is I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so whenever you use that affiliate link to buy cards off of tcgplayer.com, then some of the money will go to supporting me in the channel. And on top of which, I also do stream over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. So following and subbing is a good way to support me over on that platform as well. And on top of that, I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook. So whenever you buy one of my designs through them, then some of that money will also help go to supporting me in the channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.